I legitimately don't know how people with kids manage to record videos, because the only people in my house are me, my mom, a dog, and a cat, and it is really wildly difficult for me to find a time when everything is quiet enough for me to actually record a video. I don't know how people with small children do it. I have no idea. Hello, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Chantel, and today, if my household will allow me, I would like to finally go over the new 2025 Our Fantasy Bingo board that just came out on April 1st, and talk about some of my possible picks for it for this year. My cat will likely be providing commentary through most of this video, so I apologize. She is going to do that if she wants. There's no stopping her. She's a very talkative cat. Right. So, if you're new here, if you're unfamiliar, the fantasy subreddit, a very large forum with over 3 million members, every year does a book bingo challenge. It's a bingo card with a bunch of prompts on it, and they challenge everybody to do this if you want. There's a few basic rules for it. The main rules are, of course, every book you read for this bingo card has to be speculative fiction in some way, so it has to fall under fantasy, sci-fi, horror, dystopian, etc., etc. The other rules are you can't repeat a title for multiple prompts, so every single prompt has to be a different title, and you cannot repeat an author more than once either, unless you read like one short story by an author for the short story prompt. Then you can then also read like a novel by that same author for a different prompt, but that's the only way that you can double up on authors. And you're only allowed one reread for the entire bingo board. You can, if you choose, swap out one prompt from a previous bingo board. If one of the prompts on this one doesn't work for you, you can potentially go back to a previous bingo board and swap in a prompt that you have not previously done for one prompt. There's an optional hard mode version of every prompt on this board that you can choose to do or not to make the prompt theoretically a little more difficult. And there's also a quote-unquote hero mode whereby you review every single book that you read for this challenge. And it doesn't matter where you do that. You don't have to necessarily review the books on the Our Fantasy subreddit. You can do them in a YouTube video, for instance, or on Instagram, or just on Goodreads, or Storygraph, or whatever. So that's the general idea of this. It's a year-long, I forgot to mention, it's a year-long challenge that starts on April 1st, and it goes through March 31st of the following year. So it's year-long, runs for 12 months, so you have a full year to complete all 25 of these prompts, and generally the goal is to do all 25 of these prompts. So yeah, I completed the 2024 bingo board challenge. I did a video recapping that one. And so now I'm going to do a video. This video is to go over the new prompts and discuss some of my possibilities for this new challenge. And also possibly for some of these prompts, I can potentially provide some recommendations to other people, to other people. If you are doing this challenge, I may have some recommendations for some of these prompts. I'm calling this a pile of possibilities because many of these prompts are going to be potentially subject to change. I am very much a mood reader. If you're new to my channel, you should be aware I am a hardcore mood reader, and my mood often changes. And so basically, you should not consider any of these prompts to be set in stone, though a few of them I almost certainly will do, like the one particular book that I have in mind for the prompt. But many of these prompts, I'm going to have like several potential titles, and they will all be subject to change. So that having been said, let's go through the bingo board and we'll try to figure out what I'm going to read for most of these prompts and maybe even provide a few recommendations. As always, if you have recommendations for any of the prompts on this board, feel free to leave them in the comments. I love recommendations. I always trawl through, the subreddit always does a whole big thread of recommendations for every single prompt on the board that many people contribute to, and I usually trawl through many of those threads to find some of my possibilities, and I'm always looking for other recommendations for some of these prompts. So let's get started. So we're going to just go across row by row. First row. The first prompt is Knights and Paladins. One of the protagonists is a paladin or a knight. The hard mode of this is that the character has an oath or promise to keep. I will, oh, and also this year, I forgot to mention, personally, for me this year, I am probably not going to be focusing so much on hard mode for many of these prompts. My priorities are going to be, if I have a book that I already own that is sitting on my TBR shelf that fits the prompt, I'm probably going to try to use that book, whether it fits hard mode or not. And then at that point, I will move on to other things and maybe potentially try to do hard mode if there's nothing on my physical TBR that works for the prompt. So that's what I'm focusing on right now, is like, I'm trying to read down my physical TBR. So if a book I have on my shelf fits the prompt, I don't care whether it's hard mode or not, I'm gonna probably try to use that book. So anyway, Knights and Paladins. The easy answer for me for this is I did recently pick up the new edition of T. Kingfisher's Sword Heart, and that is a pretty classic example of a knight sworn to protect a lady, with some twists to it because it's T. Kingfisher, and so I'm going to be reading that almost certainly. Because I own it, it's sitting on my shelf, and I've already read all the Saint of Steel books, at least all of them that are out right now, so yeah, it'll probably be Sword Heart. Recommendations, I mean, the Saint of Steel series by T. Kingfisher, there's, I want to say 4 of them out now, or 5? At least 4. There's at least 4 of them. I've read all of them that are out right now. They're quite good. They're romanticises. And each one features a paladin. These paladins belong to a god that has recently died. And so they're all sort of dealing with that in various ways. And and each one of them in sequence gets a love interest. They're quite fun. The second prompt, and we're already getting to a pretty tough one. This one is called Hidden Gem, a book with under 1,000 ratings on Goodreads. New releases and arcs from popular authors do not count. Follow the spirit of the square. The hard mode of this is that it was published more than 5 years ago. Yeah, this is definitely one that I needed to do a little bit of research on. Well, first and foremost, I'm not using Goodreads. I don't go to Goodreads. I don't look at Goodreads. I'm trying to get away from Goodreads as much as possible, so I'm not using Goodreads. I'm going by how many ratings the book has on Storygraph, because Storygraph is what I use. If it's more on Goodreads, oh well. I don't turn these in officially on the subreddit, so I'm not worried about it. So basically, I went through my to-read pile. I sort of sifted through some of my to-read pile on the Storygraph and just started hunting for some books that have fewer than 1,000 ratings for them, and then sort of cross-reference that with books that my library has available. And I did actually find a couple of possibilities for this. So the first one, and the one that I'm probably tentatively going to go with right now, is called Gentleman Wolf. It's by Joanna Chambers. It's a gay Regency werewolf fantasy romance novel. It seems fun. It seems up my alley, so I might try that one. A couple of other possibilities would include The 10% Thief by Lavanya Lakshiminarayan. I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm sorry. It's a South Asian, I believe, originally. I'm not sure if it might be Filipino. I'm not sure. It's a dystopian novel about class divisions, class warfare, and stuff. So that would be a possibility. Another possibility might be A Market of Dreams and Destiny by Trip Gailey. This is like a queer romantasy that's set in like an underground world, a la sort of Neverwhere or The Starless Sea. Those are a few possibilities for that prompt that I was able to find. The third prompt, published in the 80s. Read a book that was first published anytime between 1980 and 1989. The hard mode is written by an author of color. I probably won't be doing hard mode for this. The next Discworld novel that I have to read is Guards, and that was published in 1989. So I'll probably just use that because it's there. I'm gonna read it. So there it goes. Though I think pretty much everybody who's doing hard mode for this is probably reading Octavia E. Butler. I'm planning to read some Octavia E. Butler this year, but it'll probably be one of her ones from the 90s. It'll probably be Parable of the Sower, which I believe was published in like 92 or 93. So, the fourth prompt, high fashion. Some of these prompts are really tricky this year. Read a book where clothing, fashion, or fiber arts are important to the plot. This can be a crafty main character, such as Torn by Rowena Miller, or a setting where fashion itself is explored, like A Mask of Mirrors by M.A. Carrick. The hard mode is the main character makes clothes or fibers. A good recommendation for this would actually be the Emily Wilde books, because Wendell, who's the main love interest for Emily Wilde, he's into sewing. He makes his own clothes. He makes clothes for both of them, in all three books. So there's a good recommendation for this. Honestly, for me, for this one, I might just go ahead and read A Mask of Mirrors by M.A. Carrick. That book has been on my radar for a while. It's very up my alley, so I might just try to grab it from my library and read that one. The fifth prompt is Down with the System. Read a book in which a main plot revolves around disrupting a system. The hard mode is that it's not a governmental system. The hard mode of this is pretty tricky, but the main one of this is actually really easy for me. I read a lot of books that are about like fighting the system. So like this is one that I'll probably get done without too much work. A couple that might work would be like Mark Lawrence's Library Trilogy, which I've heard a lot about and might try it. I might just like continue the Poppy War Trilogy by R.F. Kuang. I still haven't done that. But the Poppy War Trilogy is definitely very much about this. Or I also do have The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu sitting on my shelf. That might work. The Baruch Cormorant series by Seth Dickinson might work. There's a bunch. I might read another Adrian Tchaikovsky for this. There's a lot of possibilities. I don't know, maybe even Parable of the Sower could work. I don't know. There's a lot of different possibilities that I could use for this. I'll figure something out. This one shouldn't be too difficult for me to find something that would work for, because I read a lot of this stuff. I tend to read very political stuff, so like, yeah, it shouldn't be a problem for me. On to the second row. The sixth prompt is Impossible Places. Read a book set in a location that would break a physicist. The geometry, non-Euclidean. The volume, bigger on the inside. The directions, merely a suggestion. Hard mode, at least 50% of the book takes place within the impossible place. This is one for which I have, like, literally the perfect book sitting on my shelf waiting for it, and that's Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. I'm almost certainly going to be reading that for this prompt. I believe it's also a hard mode fit, so there's no reason for me to read anything else for this prompt. Otherwise, I would probably have a lot more trouble with it, but it's Piranesi. I don't even know I don't even really know anything about it, but immediately someone was like, oh, Piranesi is perfect for this prompt, and I was like, okay, great, because it's right there. I got it. So, cool. Number 7, this is another one that I'm probably not going to have any trouble with, and there's a bunch of possibilities here. So it's a book in parts. Read a book that is separated into large sections within the main text. This can include things like acts, parts, days, years, and so on, but it has to be more than just chapter breaks. And the hard mode is that the book has 4 or more parts. I have a couple of strong possibilities for this. On my TBR shelf, I have Black Leopard, Red Wolf, I believe this was called, by Marlon James. And that, I believe, has 6 parts. It's divided into parts. I started reading the Winter Night trilogy by Catherine Arden. And those are also divided into parts, so that could work. That's a couple just right off the top of my head. This is one of those prompts that books divided into parts are a pretty common thing, and I read a lot of them. I tend to read a lot of them, so I'll almost certainly read several books that would fit for this prompt over the course of the next 12 months, so it shouldn't be difficult to slot something in here. Number 8, Gods and Pantheons. Read a book featuring divine beings. Hard mode, there are multiple pantheons involved. For this one, I'm almost certainly going to be reading Sunbringer by Hannah Kaner. It's the sequel to Godkiller. It's about gods and god-type magic and the wars between gods and all that stuff. I don't know if it would count as hard mode. I'm not sure what would count as multiple different pantheons, but I don't care. It's sitting on my shelf, so I'll probably read it for this. But though I also do have currently checked out for my library Asunder by Kirsten Hall. This is one that just came up on my radar, and I just randomly grabbed it from my library, and I've been told that this may also work for this prompt. So I have a couple possibilities here. The 9th prompt is last in a series. Read the final entry in a series. The hard mode of this is that the series is 4 or more books long. This is one where I'm almost certainly going to complete it, but I'm probably not going to complete the hard mode because I don't think any of the longer series that I'm currently reading are series that I'm going to be finishing this next year. So like Realm of the Elderlings, I'm definitely not going to be finishing that this year. Discworld, definitely not going to be finishing that this year. I would probably, the only one that I could maybe potentially, if I really got the gumption, I could potentially try to binge the rest of the Memoirs of Lady Trent series, and then that would work for hard mode. But right now, like, it'll probably be Mirrored Heavens, right? Like, it'll probably be Mirrored Heavens. Either that one, or I'll probably be reading The Tomb of Dragons by Catherine Addison, which is the conclusion of the Cemeteries of Amalo trilogy that just came out. So it'll probably be one of those two. Neither of which is hard mode, but it's fine. They'll work. But, you know, if I do get up the gumption, maybe I will just power through the rest of the Memoirs of Lady Trent this year. We'll see. The 10th prompt is their standard. This one is in every bingo board. It's a book club or read-along book. So read a book that was or is officially a group read on Our Fantasy. They have a whole list or a giant Google sheet of books that you can pick from. And of course, the hard mode is to actually read and participate in a book club or read along during the bingo year, so one of their current ones. I'm really bad at hard mode. I said in my wrap-up video for 2024, I suck at doing like read-alongs as they're happening and participating in the discussions. I've never been good at that. So I probably won't bother with hard mode. I'll probably just go to the Google sheet and like find something that I want to read, as I did last year, and read it. It's not a big deal. They've done a ton of popular ones, so it should not be hard for me to find one that I want to read and slot it in. So now we're on the third row. The 11th prompt is a parent protagonist. Read a book where a main character has a child to care for. The child does not have to be biologically related to the character. And the hard mode is that the child is also a major character in the story. I am currently reading right now Golden Fool by Robin Hobb, and if you have read the Tawny Man trilogy, you know a relatively strong through line of this trilogy is the fact that Fitz is a father of sorts. whether he's a good one or a bad one or something in between is kind of up in the air, but him being a parent, particularly to Hap, is a relatively strong through line in these books. So I think I'm probably just going to go ahead and count Golden Fool for this. I don't know that Hap counts as a major character or even dutiful necessarily. I don't know if this would be hard mode, but I don't really care too much about hard mode for many of these, so I'm just gonna roll with it. Because yeah, I just realized the other day, like, Golden Fool has me by the throat right now, and I just realized the other day that, like, it's like a lot of this is just about him being a dad, and is whether he's being a good dad or not. And I'm like, well, that's perfect. I might as well just use it. Some possibilities though of other books that I have read that would be good recommendations would be like the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. In fact, the second book in that trilogy and the third book in that trilogy, the child does become an important character, and so this probably would count for hard mode. Another one would be The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi. Amina is a mother, literally a mother, though that's not hard mode. Those are two off the top of my head. Also, the God Killer series, I think it's the trilogy is called Fallen Gods trilogy by Hannah Kaner. Our main character has to act as a mother. It has to be like a parental figure to a child. And the child is also, I think, a main character. Yeah, she has POV chapters in the book, at least in the first book. So that would also count. The 12th prompt is epistolary. The book must prominently feature any of the following: diary or journal entries, letters, messages, newspaper clippings, transcripts, etc. Read an epistolary novel. Hard mode is that the book is told entirely in epistolary format. This is one of those prompts where I'm like, well, if you haven't read Frankenstein or Dracula, you should probably read one of those for this prompt, because they're both epistolary, and they both count for hard mode. And they're both really good, and if you haven't read them, you probably should. You should, if you're at all a speculative fiction fan, Frankenstein and Dracula are foundational texts for speculative genres, and you should probably read them, and they're also very good and worth your time. But for my part, I'll have to think about this one a little more, but I'll figure something out. It shouldn't be difficult. There's quite a few books that are written with this format in mind, and I shouldn't have a problem with it. I read a fair amount of epistolary type novels, so shouldn't be a big deal. Number 13, published in 2025. So this one is another one that's on the board every year, published in the current year, a book published for the first time in 2025, so no reprints or new editions of older books. It's got to be new. The hard mode of this is that it's also a debut novel. So I was looking at the recommendation thread for the published in 2025 prompt, because I do like to try to do hard mode for this one, actually. I usually read a few new releases every year, but like most of the new releases that I'm aware of are not debuts, right? They're usually continuations of series that I'm already reading, or they're new books by authors that I'm already very familiar with, because that's what sort of gets on my radar. It's what I pay attention to. So I was looking at the recommendations thread, and the very top comment on the recommendations thread is from this person called Seraphina Sphinx on Reddit. So thank you, Seraphina Sphinx. And Seraphina Sphinx says, personally, I like to make hard mode for this square a little more challenging for myself by purposely choosing a debut by an author of color. I think that's a great idea. Here's a list of debut novels from authors of color with a short blurb about each book. And she says some of them are speculative horror. I'll include release dates, so these are all hard mode qualifiers, and they're even further than that, they're all from authors of color. So there's a number of potentials here. I'll probably pick one from this list because some of these sound pretty good. This Monster of Mine by Shalini Abisakara, a dazzling ancient Rome-inspired romantasy debut, maybe not, that is a bloodbath of manipulation, deception, and forbidden love. I don't know if I'll go for romantasy. When Devils Sing by Zan Kaur. In this Southern Gothic horror novel, 4 unlikely allies in a small town investigate a local teen's disappearance, and what they discover festering at the core of their community is far more sinister and ancient than they could have ever imagined. That comes out in May. That sounds pretty good. Seventh Blade by Tonya Laird, a fast-paced, anti-colonial, indigenous-led secondary world fantasy debut from a fresh new indigenous voice that explores twisted power dynamics and the effects of settler colonialism. That's in June. Blood Slaves by Marcus Redmond. The vampire origin story is brilliantly reimagined in this terrifying novel of ancient lore, startling revenge, and immortal emancipation in 18th century America. July, sounds great. Love this one. House of Monstrous Women by Daphne Fama. A young woman is drawn into a dangerous game after being invited to the maze-like home of her childhood friend, a rumored witch, in this gothic horror set in 1986 Philippines. That's in August. Love that for me. The Door on the Sea by Caskey Russell, an epic quest fantasy debut that is the Tlingit indigenous response to The Lord of the Rings. Okay, and that's coming out in September. An Unlikely Coven by Kavita. As the only one in her elite family of witches who cannot manipulate magic, Joan Greenwood's return to New York City is lukewarm at best, but it's upended by the disastrous news that someone has created a spell that can turn an unmagical human into a powerful witch. And that is at the end of October, right in time for Halloween. So, like, all of these sound really interesting. So I'll probably pick one of those. That sounds great. Yeah. And then number 14 is another perennial bingo board favorite, The Author of Color prompt. So it's just to read a book by written by a person of color. And the hard mode is what changes every year. There's a different hard mode version of this every year. This year it's to read a horror novel by an author, of color, which so I usually try to do the hard mode of this. And this year should be no different. In fact, I currently have a hold on Stephen Graham Jones's new book, The Buffalo Hunter. I'm like third in line at my library for this book, so I'll be reading it pretty soon. So that'll do it for this square. That's probably what I'll read, though there's definitely other possibilities that I could do for this square as well. There's a number of things that I would like to read that are sort of on my radar, that I would like to get to. This October, I really should try to read a bunch of, like, horror written by authors of color in October. Like, maybe that'll be something I try to do in October, because I do try to read a lot of horror in October. So and then 15 is another perennial favorite, the small press or self-published prompt. So just read a book published by small press, aka not one of the 5 big publishing houses or Bloomsbury, or that is self-published. And, you know, again, if a formerly self-published book has been picked up by a publisher, it only counts if you read it before it was picked up by that publisher. The hard mode this year is that either the book has under 100 ratings on Goodreads, or it's written by a marginalized author. I'm probably just going to be continuing with the series that I started with Dionysus in Wisconsin, because I liked it and I want to continue the series, and they're all self-published, and they all have less than 100 ratings on Storygraph, at least. So I think I'm just going to continue with that for now. The fourth row. Next is Biopunk, which this is also a really interesting and potentially tricky prompt. Read a book that focuses on biotechnology and or its consequences. The hard mode of this is that there is no electricity-based technology in the book at all. I think I'm probably going to be doing the one that, like, basically everybody's going to be doing for this, which is I'll probably plan on reading The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. Again, it's a book that I'm aware of. I've seen a lot of people reading. It fits the prompt. I want to read it. It seems perfect for this, so I might as well. Number 17, Elves and or Dwarves. Read a book that features the classical fantasy archetypes of elves and or dwarves. They don't have to fit the classic tropes, but must be either named as elves and or dwarves, or be easily identified as such. The hard mode of this is that the main character is an elf or a dwarf. For this one, off the top of my head, I'll probably just read The Tomb of Dragons by Catherine Addison, because I'm going to be reading it, and it's all about elves and goblins and stuff, and so, like, none of the characters are human in this world. They're all either elves or goblins or half elves or half goblins or whatever. I can't remember what Selahar is, if he's like an elf or something. I don't remember, but, like, many of the characters are elves, so it works. This is one of those prompts. This is like the prompt this year where it's like, if you haven't read Lord of the Rings and you're, like, waiting for an excuse to read The Lord of the Rings, then you should read The Lord of the Rings for this prompt. Number 18 is an LGBTQIA protagonist. Read a book where the main character is under the LGBTQIA umbrella. This is one where, I mean, I read a lot of queer fiction. This is going to be done by default. The hard mode of this is that the character is marginalized on at least one additional axis. So like they're queer and they're disabled. They're queer and they're also a person of color, or they're a member of an ethnic, religious, cultural minority within the story, or whatever. You know, again, I got a lot of possibilities for this one. There's a ton that I could do. So, like, if I read Asunder for the Gods and Pantheons one, then maybe I'll use Sunbringer for this one, because the main character of Sunbringer is bisexual and she's also disabled, so that's hard mode. So, like, I might do that. Something like that. But there's a lot. This is a really easy one for me. I don't have a problem with this. I'll find something. Number 19 is another perennial bingo board favorite. It's the 5 SFF short stories prompt. So any 5 SFF short stories. The hard mode of this, of course, is to read an entire SFF anthology or collection. And I do have like the best science fiction short stories of 2022, I think, that I bought at like a library sale a few months ago. It's sitting on my shelf, so I'll probably read that because it's a collection of short stories. It's there, it's sitting on my shelf, and I believe the editor on that was Rebecca Roanhorse, so I think that'll be pretty fun. That should have some good ones in it. Number 20, Stranger in a Strange Land. Read a book that deals with being a foreigner in a new culture. The character or characters, if they're a group, must be either visiting or moving in as a minority, and the hard mode is that the main character is an immigrant or refugee. God, there's a number of possibilities for this. I actually just today watched a video from someone who was really talking up Natasha Pulley. And her recent book, The Mars House, actually features this. The main character is an immigrant from Earth to a Martian colony. So maybe I'll do that. But there's a lot of possibilities for this. This is a pretty basic one. I'm not too worried about it. Again, this is another one that's like the kind of theme that is really popular in a lot of SFF and a lot of sci-fi and fantasy, and it should not be hard to come up with an interesting one, because I generally like this kind of trope, and I enjoy reading this trope, and I tend to read it a lot, so I'll almost certainly find something that'll work for this. On the final row, the 21st prompt is to recycle a bingo square. Man, I have not figured this one out yet. So you can use a square from a previous year as long as it does not repeat one on the current card. So, like, you can't, pick a book club square, right? The book club squares on every bingo board. Don't do 2 of them. And, of course, the hard mode is to do the hard mode. I haven't had a chance. I haven't even gone back and looked yet. I need to go find one that I like and pick a book. So, yeah, that's still kind of up in the air. I'll figure that one out. I'll get that one figured out at some point. Yeah. The 22nd prompt is Cozy SFF, so read a cozy sci-fi and or fantasy book. The hard mode of this is that the author is new to you. I actually kind of have the perfect one for this. I will probably read, the first one that popped into my head at least for this is The Teller of Small Fortunes by Julie Long. This would be hard mode for me because I've never read anything by Julie Long. And this has been on my radar for a bit. It's got a really cute cover. I've heard really good things about it. It sounds like it would be something that's right up my alley. So I'll probably do The Teller of Small Fortunes for this one. Number 23, generic title. This is a funny one. Read a book that has one or more of the following words in the title: blood, bone, broken, court, dark, shadow, song, sword, or throne. Plural is allowed. The hard mode of this is just that the title contains more than one of the listed words, or contains at least one word and a color, number, or animal, real or mythical. So, you know, this is clearly spoofing a certain trend in current SFF publishing. I do have Blood Over Brighthaven just literally sitting on my shelf, so that's a possibility. There's a number of possibilities for this that I could do. The Jasmine Throne might be one that I've been meaning to read it. I've read Tasha Suri's the Books of Amba duology. I really would like to get to her trilogy that she just finished like last year. So that might be one. I don't know. There's a bunch that I could do for this. But the one that's like it's literally sitting on my shelf and I'm intending to read it like within the next 6 months is Blood Over Brighthaven by M.L. Wong. So I might just do that, even though it's not hard mode, but it'll work. The 24th prompt is not a book. Do something now but new besides reading a book. So watch a TV show, play a game, learn how to summon a demon. Okay, maybe not that last one. But yeah, so spend time with fantasy, science fiction, or horror in another format. Movies, video games, TTRPGs, board games, etc. all count. There's no rule about how many episodes of a show will count, or whether or not you have to finish a video game. New is the key word here. We do not want you to play a new save on a game you've played before or watch a new episode of a show you enjoy. You can do a whole new TTRPG or a new campaign in a system you've played before, but not a new session in a game you've been playing. The hard mode is just to write and post a review of it to our fantasy. This is actually a little bit trickier for me, not because I don't watch or involve myself in SFF and other than books. My problem is that I actually watch a lot of SFF and play a lot of SFF video games. So like this month alone in April, there's 3 new seasons of 3 TV shows that I really like that would all fit for this, but they're new seasons of shows that I've already been watching. So there's Andor season 2, there's the new season of Doctor Who is out, and the second season of The Last of Us is out and they're all coming out this month. They're all shows I've already watched. And like the Wheel of Time, like I watched the first season of Wheel of Time. I need to catch up with it, but I did watch it. I've watched What We Do in the Shadows. I've been watching Severance. I've watched Silo. I've watched The 3-Body Problem on Netflix. I've watched a ton of stuff. I just recently watched Bong Joon-ho's latest film, Mickey 17, in the theater a few weeks ago. I watch a lot of TV and movies, and I watch a lot of sci-fi and fantasy TV and movies because that's what I like. So I'm actually really gonna I might have to really dig around and find something. Couple of recommendations I have for this off the top of my head. His Dark Materials. They did a 3-season adaptation of the His Dark Materials trilogy with HBO and BBC. This one right here, starring Daphne Keane, which is great. It's quite good. I think it kind of has its ups and downs for sure for me, but what I think is really important to me is that it really stuck the landing. So it really got the ending right. And it got the vibes pretty good for most of its run. So I definitely would recommend that. I think it's flown a little bit under the radar, but it ended up being quite good. If you're into fantasy sci-fi TV at all, I would recommend His Dark Materials. It's on the HBO app, whatever that is. But yeah, I'm really gonna have to think about this one. I might have to dig around to see because like I don't play a ton of video games, but again, the ones I do like I'm really into. Maybe I could count an Assassin's Creed game. I say I'm wondering if it would count because not because Assassin's Creed doesn't fit in speculative fiction. It does. It's sci-fi. But I have played several of the games, so I'm not sure if it would count if I'm playing like a new Assassin's Creed game, because it's in the series. I don't know, but maybe Assassin's Creed. I should get back to Assassin's Creed at some point. I gotta play the French Revolution one. I think it's called Assassin's Creed Unity. I'm trying to play them in like release order, so that's where I'm at. I finished the pirate one. I have to do the French Revolution one next, so maybe I'll do that one. I don't know, we'll see. There's a lot of stuff though. Inevitably I will watch more fantasy sci-fi things as the year goes on, so maybe the Murderbot series. Again, I don't know. Does an adaptation of a book series you're familiar with count? If not, then Murderbot. I'll be watching Murderbot. The trailer for that just came out like yesterday. It looks really good. Should maybe that one. I don't know. I'll be watching a lot of sci-fi and fantasy stuff, movies and television over the course of the year, so it'll happen. And then the final prompt for this is pirates. Read a book where characters engage in piracy. And the hard mode is that it's not a seafaring pirate. So The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi is, of course, a perfect fit for this if you don't care about hard mode. The hard mode is a little bit trickier. I'm not even sure what I'm going to do for this one entirely. Running Close to the Wind by Alexander Rowland has been on my radar for a bit, so maybe that one. It's not hard mode, but that's okay. Or maybe the Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels. There's some cute, cozy things that kind of would count for this. I think Running Close to the Wind would also qualify as like cozy, but yeah, I don't know. I'll have to, again, this is another one where I'm just gonna have to do some more research and see if I can find something, because there is quite a bit of like piratey stuff out there, but I just need to decide what to do for it and if I want to try to do hard mode or not, because that would make a big difference in this prompt and which book I read for this prompt. So yeah, we'll see. But yeah, the Live Ship Traders trilogy is a good one for this prompt. Again, if you don't want to do hard mode. I'm not sure I can think of any hard modes off the top of my head. This one would require me to actually go back and do some looking, but that's okay. I won't worry about it. So yeah, anyway, that's my Our Fantasy bingo board. Some of my possibilities, some of them I haven't even really looked at yet. I still need to go back and find an old prompt to use for the use an old prompt. But yeah, that's what I got. I'm pretty excited to get started on this. And we'll see how we do. As I said, I completed 2024's board, so I have confidence that I will complete 2025's board as well. I do think there's some tricky ones this year, but that's just, for me, makes it a little more fun. I like finding new niche things to read. The Hidden Gem one is fun. The Biopunk one is fun. So yeah, it should be a good time. What have you got for yours? Are you doing this year? Got any recommendations for some of these prompts? Let me know in the comments below. And yeah, otherwise, like, comment, subscribe, whatever. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.